Hello, Lisa here. Welcome back to my channel, and I have been planning this video for a while and I'm really excited to be able to now be able to film it. And that is because I have received my Tarot Grand Lux from Ciro Marchetti. This is the most recent addition to, and it's supposed to be his swan song or his last deck that he is making. But I have heard through the grapevine that there is a encore deck, literally called Encore, that he is developing right now, and that'll probably be his last one. But I thought it would be a great time to do a side-by-side comparison of all three of Ciro Marchetti's decks that I currently own. I do have as well, or had as well, the Gilded Tarot, which was the first Ciro Marchetti deck that I ever owned. But this Gateway to the Divine was one of the first decks that I ever actually connected to. And it was one of the first decks that I would really consider kind of a Rider-Waite-Smith based deck that I used, because I used the Osho Zen Tarot for such a long time. But Ciro's artwork is absolutely beautiful, and one thing I've found over the past years is that I tend to only really reach for these decks in particular situations, and I decided to do a side-by-side and potentially consider narrowing down to just one. I suspect the Tarot Grand Lux may be the one, but we'll see, and I may decide to keep more than one in my collection, but I just really want to take you guys through. So I've put all of these decks in order. This one, of course, just came in, so it's already in order, and we're going to do a flip through sort of comparison of all three. So before I get into that, I just wanted to talk about packaging. So when I got my Gateway to the Divine Tarot, which, by the way, check out this mega thick guidebook, it came in one of those larger, flimsier cardboard boxes. And one of the things that I think is a real standout about this deck, and a reason why I might consider keeping this, even if it's a duplicate, is that the guidebook features multiple perspectives on every single card. So the guidebook was, I believe, a joint project. Let's see if he names who they are. I think he does in the beginning. But every card has perspective from multiple people. So let's see. I'm gonna see if it's in here. There's a bunch of stuff here. A question in history, a lesson in history, and I think, oh my goodness, the journey begins. There's a lot of, I don't even remember what's in this part of the guidebook. I haven't looked at this in a very long time, but here we go. Ciro had a lot to say. Here we go. This is what I was looking for. So the contributors to the guidebook are Ciro Marchetti, the digital artist who created the deck, Ruth Ann and Wald Amberstone, James Rickcliffe, a certified tarot master, Lisa Ruffalo, who has a background in software engineering and a deep and abiding interest in all things tarot, and is the author of the Tarot of Color and the Kaleidoscope Tarot. And she also has independently published decks. So I'm just gonna have a sip of my tea. Fair warning, this is probably going to be a long one. Because he has all these different perspectives, when you flip to any card, you get the perspective from Ciro, from Ruth Ann and Wald Amberstone, and you get all of those people's perspectives on every card, whether it be keywords or information on the artwork, meanings, etc. And it's just really, really interesting. And this guidebook is definitely one of the reasons why I've been very attached to this deck. But to be honest, I haven't looked at it in a really, really long time. The decks themselves are a standard tarot size. I've got it in this really gorgeous gold Peggy bag that Peggy made me just for this deck. This is what the backs look like. So she made me this deck with a black line, or sorry, this is a that dark green lining, and then the gold to match the deck. Uh-oh, did I get them out of order? Of course I did. Okay, well, there we go. I have edged this deck in black, which did bring new life to it. It had started to be a little bit on the chipped side. Oh boy, there we go. So that is what that deck looks like. The cardstock is flimsy but sturdy, like it's not anything special, but it's pretty standard, especially for decks that were created around this time. And I believe this deck actually came out in, let's see, first edition, third printing. So it was first released in 2009, but my copy was a 2014 printing. So I think at one point I had a different copy and then I replaced it or something, because I feel like I had mine longer than that, but there we go. So that's that one. The Tarot of Dreams, this was originally, I believe, one of his very first decks, so it was out of print for a long time, and it was recently reprinted, I want to say last year, so it now comes in a sturdy 2-piece box. And some things that make this particular deck different, just get the guidebook and stuff out, these are the backings. Let's put the deck back in order. So it comes with a Kabbalah card. I've also edged this deck in black, and there's the addition of palace cards. So in every suit you have a palace or the environment of that suit, which is really unique. And this is something that sets this particular deck apart. And I can already tell you as I'm looking at all 3 of these that I probably will end up keeping them all because I'm not sure I'll be able to actually narrow it down. But this one is nice because the cardstock is a little bit thicker. This is a US Games publication, and their cardstock has just been really wonderful lately. Make sure I'm not lying to you that it really is US Games. Yeah, it's US Games. And the other thing that's nice about this is the size. So here's what the backings look like. And so for comparison to the Legacy of the Divine, it's definitely wider and taller. And it gives us this more like almost independent deck kind of feel. So that is the Tarot of Dreams. Let's take a look at the guidebook. I'll get the box out of the way. So the guidebook for this one is a little bit less chunky. And this one, what's really neat is that the way the cards are designed, you have clear planetary and Hebrew, planetary symbology, Hebrew letter, and so it's just really easy to see the correspondences on the card from an astrological standpoint. And as we get into the minors, no, that's a palace. So's that. That's a court. I can do this. Okay, there we go. You get the planet in the sign. So you get, for example, this is Saturn in Leo. Or Capricorn. No, yeah, Saturn in Leo. My astrology, you guys, not the best. So that's really cool about this deck, which makes it a really great one to reach for astrological study because the correspondences are so easy to see. See, there's just really cool things about each of these decks. And so in the guidebook, you get a good amount of information as well as some astrological information. And in the quartz, you get personality, stage of development, and approach, which is really cool. And then, of course, you have some information on those palaces. So I'm going to set those guidebooks aside so that we can just look at the cards because I'm going to be zooming us in here in just a minute. And then thirdly, we have the Tarot Grand Lux. Now this deck originally came out independent, and when it did, I remember watching people flip through the cards and thinking, oh man, this one is my favorite so far. So it comes in a really, oh sorry, let me back up. Then it was picked up by US Games and it became much more accessible, and then I was like, oh my gosh. So it's US Games again, and they have been just killing it lately. Really nice 2-piece boxes. You saw even in the Tarot of Dreams, but this one just takes it that one step further. It feels again like an independent deck. It just feels like a nicer quality box, so that's really exciting. And this one has the smallest guidebook of all 3 decks. It's kind of interesting to see the evolution when you think about it, right? We have my first Chiro deck, my second, and now my third. And you can definitely see an evolution there as well. I think at this point, Chiro's art really does speak for itself. So this has about a half page on each card, a little bit less even on the quartz. And not a lot else, and that's totally fine with me. I find that his decks are really great for beginners to tarot or for anybody looking for a Rider-Waite-Smith clone. And let's take a look at the size. So here we have Legacy of the Divine, which is standard. Let's flip them over so I can show you the backs too. So Legacy of the Divine, Tarot of Dreams, and here is the Grand Lux, and it looks like it's the same exact size as the Tarot of Dreams. It is. So it is the same size as Tarot of Dreams. And here's what it looks like with the Legacy of the Divine. You can see how much overlay there is. I have not edged this deck yet. I probably will. I love that there is a black border on both sides, which makes edging decks a breeze. If you've never edged a deck before, edging in black on a deck that has black front and back around the border makes it so easy, because if you have a little bit of wrap with the pen, you don't have to worry about any of that messing up your deck. Oh, I've got, I think, a helicopter. That's new. Okay, so the other thing is that of the 3 decks, both Legacy of the Divine and the Tarot of Dreams both have this sort of soft black border that sort of blends into the image, whereas the Tarot Grand Lux has a very defined border, and yet you can see that Ciro has played with the border and allowed the images to extend out of the border, which gives it a really cool three-dimensional feel. So we're going to dive right into the flip through. I'm going to see if I can zoom us in just a bit and we can get a little bit closer in. And we're going to go through all of the cards. I'll tell you which of the three is my favorite in every category. And we're going to get into it. So let me bring us in a little tighter. Perfect. Beautiful. And I'm just going to hit us with a little sage because this is what I do when I'm playing with new decks, is I like to get my smudge going. And just a little bit of Palo Santo, and we'll be ready to go. Alrighty. My poor Palo Santo does not like to stay lit anymore. It's getting pretty done. Alright. If you don't already, make sure you have a nice cup of tea or something to sip on, take your time. So first here we have the Fool. So just as a reminder, Legacy of the Divine, Tarot of Dreams, and the Tarot Grand Lux. So this first Fool card, I really think that I prefer one of these two. I don't like the way that this is like an empty, like you don't see an actual person. There's no face there. Yeah, so that one I would say is a no for me. These two, I like this one, and I think the reason I like it, this one got us out in space, and I actually forgot to say, so I'm going to say it now because why not? But one of the reasons why I was so attracted to the Legacy of the Divine is because the Legacy of the Divine tarot app was the first tarot app I ever bought, and I remember having a tablet, my very first ever tablet, and using this app on the tablet, and it was absolutely a magical experience. And this card always reminds me of that app for some reason. So this has got some nostalgia, but I think for just showing the image of the Fool really, really well, I love this one. You get this close-up image of what the Fool looks like, but you also have this embarking on a journey, this sort of traipsing along energy down here with the dog, and I just think it's just really effective. For our Magician, oh man, I really prefer these two as well. I love the way that Ciro's magicians really feel like they're manifesting energy. They're really holding space. He always makes sure that the elements are present, but I think as far as like the overall vibe, oh man, I love this one with the alchemical symbols. I'm gonna have to go with this one. Our High Priestess, oh, okay, for me it's hands down the Tarot Grand Lux. I love how traditional and yet ethereal she is. I love the triple moon symbol up here. Oh, I just love that. And when we look at this one in the center, she's a little, I don't know, there's something a little bit more modelly about this one. Although you can read her scroll, which is pretty cool, and it says, "Darkness into darkness, the key to all mystery." And this one I've never really liked. There's something about her that feels cold, and I don't see the High Priestess as cold. When we get into the Empress, again, it's a hands down winner in the Tarot Grand Lux for me. I just love this Gaia vibe we have here. This beautiful illustration, the way that it comes out of the border, this like Earth Mother with her clutching the babe to her arms is just stunning. These two, the center one, Tarot of Dreams, not my favorite again. She almost reads more magician-y the way, I know she's holding a baby, but this could actually be really cool if you're thinking about reading for somebody where you want to speak to the idea of birthing an idea or a project, and not necessarily, because this glowing baby gives this impression of magic, but I just like to see more nurturing energy in my Empress. So I would say I like this one the best, and I like this one second best, and this one the third. So let's take a look at our Emperors. Right away I can tell you this one is not my favorite, and that's because I think I'm used to seeing the color red really jump out at me for my Emperor card, and what I see here is a lot of gold and yellow. But I think that with these two, they both say Emperor to me, but I feel like this one feels a little more refined. So I would say probably my favorite is this one, although artistically, I feel like this one is much more clear and easy to look at. I also do like that we get the layers in the clothing and the structure in the building around him is a lot more square, which is something I like to see in my 4, and especially in my Emperor card. This one we have this giant ram's head in the stained glass, but this guy feels a little more wandsy almost, whereas he feels more neutral. So yeah, actually I am gonna take it back. I think this Teragram Luxe is my favorite. Next we have our Hierophant, and oh boy, this is so tough because I freaking love this Legacy of the Divine image, because I love how we see all these different faiths, and there's actually words written in the language of that faith inscribed over top of the figures. I don't know if the card's gonna pick that up, which is just stunning when we're speaking to like multiple ways to look at this idea. In the Tarot of Dreams, he actually calls it faith. Oh, and so he does in the Legacy of the Divine as well, but he calls it the Hierophant in the Tarot Grand Lux. Now, I'll be honest, these two make me more comfortable, but I know that in my own personal work that it's important for me to view the Hierophant in a more neutral way, because there's a lot of shadow work I've done around this card. And in that way, the more imposing feeling in this card of that weight of structure and tradition, I think it comes through more strongly here. So I think that if you're somebody that can be put off by very popey Hierophants, these cards make the Hierophant much more accessible. But this is more where I'm at with my journey right now. So it's still my favorite. I know, it's so funny. Okay, this one's way easier. I have never liked this Lover's card, and it's beautiful, don't get me wrong. They've each got the wing, their heart and, or sorry, their head and the wing sort of makes this heart shape between the two of them. There's a lot of beautiful imagery here, but I cannot get over this sort of mullet 70s hairdo vibe I get off this card. I can't get past it. The Lover's card in the Tarot of Dreams is super sensual and beautiful. You can also get a lot of that energy of being caught up in the moment. It almost leans shadow side of Lovers to me, this idea of getting almost too caught up in one another. But the Tarot Grand Lux, this is a beautiful image. You get the swans in the foreground, you have the sort of planet overlooking the card here, and actually, what are we looking at for planetary associations here? I have no, oh, Gemini, of course. It's not a planet. But I believe, I don't know what planet rules. You know what, I'm not gonna try to do the astrology thing, I'm sorry. I still have so much more learning to do. But you do get that idea of something overseeing. I think this is the most balanced of all 3 cards. Next we have our Chariot. Ciro's chariots never disappoint. That was a mouthful, but I love the way these two are coming at me. More so than this one, even though this one is in the sea, which I adore. This one feels a little bit more, there's some things about the Tarot of Dreams that feel a little more futuristic, and in fact much of Ciro's art leans more futuristic in a way. And these both have that more futuristic element to me. This one feels the most traditional, and I just love the way they're coming at you, and you really get all of this expression on the horses themselves. I think it's just beautifully rendered artwork, and yeah, that one has to be my favorite. Oh, strength cards. You know, one thing I've noticed about Ciro's artwork, especially some of his earlier decks, is that there's definitely this sort of like almost fantasy erotic gamer style art. I don't know how else to describe that quality to his artwork. And I definitely see that more in these first 2 cards. I like that the lion is tranquil in this card, and I also like this idea of seeing her touch sort of the 3rd eye point, or the crown chakra point rather, on each of these animals and sort of connecting with them. I think you can tell a story with this card, and so that's really cool. In this one we see the lion being, or the tiger rather, being a lot more ferocious. I just realized that's a tiger, not a lion. So that right there kind of disqualifies it a little in my head. Gets the idea across, but I want to see a lion in my strength card. And so this one definitely wins out. I just love the wildness of the wind and the elements all around her, and her calm and the lion's calm. Beautiful. Hermit. I could not get on with this hermit. He's just too young, and maybe that's unfair of me. I'm sure we do have young hermits in the world, but it bugged me. He just seemed like he hadn't seen enough. The Hermit in the Tarot of Dreams is good, not my favorite. The Hermit in the Tarot Grand Lux, though, oh, it's everything. I love the close-up view. I love that you see this sage, older figure. I love that you have the perspective of this sort of journey traveled, the idea of solitude, the lamp. Ticks all the boxes for me. Ciro's wheels, I don't know. They've never really been my favorite. None of these are, well, see, I always start to say that and then I start to look at them. This one here never really spoke to me all that much at the time, but now with perspective, I definitely see where he was going with this. I'm glad that the Torah letters are in the center of the wheel. We have the astrological signs, and you definitely get the idea with these jester figures or the fool figure that there's different places or experiences to being at different parts of the wheel. It worked fine. The wheel from the Tarot of Dreams is not balanced enough for me. You don't get the 4 even elements in each corner. It never quite felt, it felt a little too ambiguous, I think is the thing. I don't see the 4 letters, the Torah. They may be tucked in there somewhere and I just haven't spotted them, but so that's a bit of a deal breaker as well. And then finally, the wheel from the Tarot Grand Lux. Now this is much better to me. We have a little bit more balance in the image itself. I'm still not seeing Torah in this image. And at first I was like, oh, he's got the astrological signs here, but he doesn't. He has a monkey, a lion, CM, which I'm assuming is for Ciro Marchetti, and then I'm not sure what animal that is over in this corner. And it's probably just my old lady eyes, but I have no idea what that is. I do love the moon phases though. That's one element I can kind of attach myself to on this card and kind of go with it intuitively. There's also actually a feeling here now that I'm looking at it a little more closely of a roulette wheel. The way that this is spinning, you get this feeling of movement, and the moon phase almost looks like the ball rolling in the roulette wheel. So that's actually kind of cool. I don't know, on this one, it's a bit of a toss-up. I should have kept all 3 cards out. I think probably, yeah, probably this one is my favorite. All right, let's take a look at the Justice. I'll try to remember to keep the cards out for now. I don't love the 2 figures in Justice. I can work with it, but it's not my favorite. I do love the yin-yang symbol on the scale here in the center. I love that we get this idea that one of them is more concerned with sort of law and one of them is more concerned with justice in that sense, like delivering punishment, etc., dealing with the law or the truth. There's a lot to jump off of, but it's just not my favorite. The Justice card from the Tarot of Dreams. This is really interesting because this figure in the card, I believe, is an armored woman, and that's really interesting because you get this idea of sort of rigidity and immobility in a way of neutrality. I don't know if that made sense. It made sense in my head. The way that neutrality can bind us up and keep us a little bit closed off, which is interesting, but it's a very metallic, heavy card. I really, really love the beauty in this Justice card. You get the figure herself is soft, her eyes are blindfolded, you get the scales are present here, you have the sword pointing downward and the feather, and you get the idea of the weighing against the feather, which is really cool. I think this one's my favorite. Hanged Man. I will say one thing, Chiro does men beautifully in his deck, and it's something that I'm not particular about men necessarily, but I just love the way he depicts men, and these images feel like they're very classy. Even with the women, even though it's kind of a little bit of that gamer kind of art, I feel like it's very classy. Of these, I think my favorite, just aesthetically, is this one here. You get the feeling of the Jester, but there's a bit of more freedom. There's a lot more of the sort of nature, earthly element, and cards that have more nature in them tend to be my favorite anyway, and a lot of Chiro's cards feature a lot of man-made objects, a lot of metal, things like that, and this is just going to be more appealing to me if for no other reason than the nature present. But I really like this one as well. I'm just not fond of all the gears and things, and it is kind of a trademark of a lot of Chiro's work, is this sort of almost steampunky feel to some of it, or modern elements woven in. I think it's interesting that we have like almost this like robotic or metallic almost Saturn type planet in the background, which you could imagine is actually a different view of the wheel. Interesting. Anyway, I've got to speed this up, yo. I'm taking way too long. Okay, this video is going to be 1,000,000 hours long. I'm going to try to speed it up and just pick my favorite. Death. This one's my favorite, hands down. I hate this Death card. There's something about that like creepy face that just bugs me. Not a fan. Love this with the Rider. And this one's okay. It's okay. I like that he's masked. I like that he has the white rose. Temperance. Oh, Ciro's Temperance cards are always so, so beautiful. I love this one with the water and the fire discs and the rainbow. This one's beautiful as well, but it's a more angelic sort of take on it. I know they're all angels, but this one just feels more angelic. And this one is good. I feel like the two combining elements aren't quite as obvious in this card, but it's still really, really stunning. Our devil cards. I love me an alluring, attractive looking devil, and so I love this card. I just love it. This one is also really quite good. You get the idea of entrapment, but the door's open. This one's a little more in your face, again with too much of a close-up of like a creepy face, not my favorite. This one here is probably my favorite. I like the idea that the devil is tempting. So now we have our Tower card, and I think these two are pretty equal to me, except for in this card you can really see the destruction happening to the tower. You can see that the top has been blown off, whereas in this one you almost get the impression of the lightning bolt is happening, but you don't see a lot of actual destruction. And in this one, the spacey, weird shape to the building just makes me think of sci-fi movies. So I really think that my favorite in this one is the Teragrams Luxe. Love these star cards. This one's good, but again with that sort of future-y sort of feeling. Same thing here. She seems like she's literally in space. Not sure I'm a super huge fan. It's workable though, but the Teragrams Luxe is my favorite. These moon cards are all gorgeous, and I could make a case for any of them, although I will say that these are my top two, and the Teragrams Luxe comes in at the top just for having the really visible imagery. You still have the crayfish, the dog, and the wolf. You have this idea of a forward path to make your way through. The broken building gives you an idea that, you know, you might not have the clearest path, but it's still doable. You just have to face your fears. This one feels a little romance novel covery to me, but it is a pretty image. And this one in the center is really, really unique, and I like it. I especially like that you get the dog and the wolf like facing you right as if you're the one taking that journey. But I'm missing sort of that path. It's almost like you're meant to fly through or something. I don't know. So definitely Teragrams Luxe on that one. All of these sun cards are really good. It's a toss-up with these two. This one's a little too distant for me, and it's an interior space. This one also, I think they're all interior spaces. Let's just take a look. This one's literally like, I don't know, this one's really cool. But I think I do like the Egyptian feel of this sun the best. I'm not entirely sure why either. I can't quite articulate it, but I do love seeing a little bit of Egypt show up in our sun card. For Judgment, these are all really, really gorgeous, but this one's my favorite. It's a little more traditional, really beautifully rendered. And again, I like how you get these elements of like feeling like the image is very three-dimensional. These ones feel a little more distant, a little more spacey. I don't know if spacey is the right word, but... All right, look at the world. Oh, I really like the Tarot of Dreams world. You get the four elements really, really obviously. We have our Fool in the center, perfectly balanced, looking much more evolved than he did in his original Fool state. I really like that. In the Legacy of the Divine, this has never really been my favorite. It just feels, again, too much like the Fool. And it's very thematically appropriate for the deck. It just never quite spoke to me. This one here is really wonderful and traditional in its way. You've got the four elements. I like the Vesica Pisces shape of the boundary here, which is much more reminiscent of the Rider-Waite-Smith with the lemniscate, is that right? No. With that snaky Ouroboros, oh my gosh, my words, with the Ouroboros that surrounded. I like the power in this as well, and this idea of these two sort of wands coming together. I really love that, but I also love the elemental nature of this one. Let's look at our aces. Uh-oh. Okay, we're not in the order I was expecting. So let's get into the wands first. Sorry guys, I actually thought this was all perfectly aligned, but not so much. Okay, there we go. There we go. Now we should be in the same order. Okay. The aces, hands down, Teragrams Luxe. I just love this ace, but they're all beautiful. In the 2, you know, Chiro does his 2 of Wands so well. Okay, so let's take a look at the 3. These are all really, really gorgeous. They all show that manifestation idea. They're all showing somebody with this ship in the sky. If I had to pick, I would pick this one just because of the way that the art seems so much more deep, like literal depth-wise, like not like meaning-wise. And I love the way that this wand is kind of coming out over top of the border like that, but they all illustrate the idea beautifully. Really, really gorgeous. This 4 of Wands has always confused me as a reader to look at and to work with. This one doesn't give me quite enough. This one is perfect. So this is an easy win for me with the Tarot Grand Lux. And we're looking at the 5. These all have such similar feel, but I have to say I love this one with just the hands showing all of the clashing of the wands. Our victorious 6. I probably prefer this one here. It just has that really dynamic victory feel, but they all get the point across. The 7. These 2 are the most dynamic, and again, I'm really loving these elements where the wand is sort of popping forward of the frame or the border of the card. This one wins. In the 8, we have 2 cards showing the wands coming at you. This one, the wands seem to almost be flying overhead. This one, they're coming right at you, and that's a hands down winner. This one I've never really loved. These all show a really similar idea of feeling kind of tired and nearly done, just needing to make that final push. I think that this one looks a little too comfortable, and this one gets the idea across the most effectively. But these 2 are very similar. I would say Tarot Grand Lux if I had to pick. Of all of these 10 of Wands, these 2 do the best job for sure. I love the pushing through the tangles energy here, and I love the idea that he's had to pause to take a break here. This one works fine as a reader because I understand the meaning, but is less clear. So I would say this one's my favorite, Tarot Grand Lux. When it comes to the pages, I definitely prefer the Tarot Grand Lux, and I probably am going to say that about all the quartz, but I just love the addition of the elemental energies that you really see here. So we see a dragon represented here in the page. With the other 2, it's just a little too people-y. There's just not enough other stuff to go off of. And so we see that similar energy here in the Knight. I don't love the Knights in the Legacy of the Divine because they're just hollow helmets. This one's pretty cool. He's riding a dragon, but I really just love the way the quartz were done in the Grand Lux. Same story here. She's got almost a tribal feel to her face, maybe just the way her like facial markings are. This one just feels way too young for a queen. This one hits the bill, or fits the bill rather. This King of Wands, I don't know what it is, but I cannot get past the 7 that I see on his robe. And I don't know if that's actually supposed to symbolize something and I'm just missing it, or if not, I don't even think it's actually a 7 now that I look at it. It's the way the staff goes in front of the belt. But every time I pull this card, I can't get past seeing a 7 there, so that one's out. And for the kings here, I definitely prefer the Tarot Grand Lux. It's just a more beautifully designed card. It just speaks better to me. Now the Palace is unique to the Tarot Dreams, so we really have nothing to compare it to. When it comes to the Ace of Cups, this cup looks empty, which is a bit of a problem for me. These are both underwater, so I can see them as being full, but this one is empty, and I don't know. I have an issue with my cups needing to have stuff in them. So I would say these 2 are pretty similar, but I'll go with Tarot Grand Lux. There's a few more fish showing in there. In the 2, we have very similar ideas across all 3 cards. Well, at least these 2 are very similar. Here we have 2 hands crossing and toasting with the rainbow. Here we have 2 hands coming out of the cups, which I really love. And here we have 2 swans. This one's the least connected for me. These 2 are pretty similar. I love the way they're holding hands though, so I'll go with the Tarot Grand Lux. Okay, the 3 of Cups really missed the mark in both of his previous decks to me, because in here we have a single figure celebrating, which to me is not what the 3 of Cups is about. Here we have the idea of figures with these few different masks here, But here we actually have 3 figures represented. 3 figures are toasting, and we see these 3 figures up here. This one wins hands down. These 4s are all really nice, but wow, what Ciro did with his facial expressions in this Tarot Grand Lux is incredible. There's a dreaminess to this card, almost like a lack of being grounded, that's really interesting. I really like this, and I like that he has the figure looking at the 4th cup when normally we see the figure ignoring the 4th cup, so that one's the winner. These 5 of Cups are all very emotional and hit the mark. All 3 of them hit the mark. I just love them. This one feels the most dramatic. This one feels, I think, the most relatable in the ways that this can show up as a small energy and not just a big energy. Oh, the 6s. This one wins hands down. You put a swing in my 6 of Cups and you win. Like, that's just the way it is. There's also some really adorable stuffies and toys here. The winner, Tarot Grand Lux. These are both really sweet. This one's too close up, I think, for me. This one's really nice with the kids, like, or the girl thinking about back when she was flying the kite. But again, empty cups. It's just a thing. I can't with that. Okay, so in the 7, this one feels a little too pippy, and this one does as well. I mean, they're fine. They work well. And I love that you can really see what's in each of the 7 cups and how different the objects are. But I would say here the winner is our castle in the sky with the rainbow here. It's very fairy tale dreaming, and that's exactly what I like to see in my 7 of Cups. These 8s are all good. This one is the most relatable and real and grounded. And I think that's one of the things I'm starting to notice as we're going through all of these cards, is that the Tarot Grand Lux feels more grounded. When we look at these images, these are both more like, almost like, this one's more spiritual feeling, and this one feels more emotional. This one feels more like, okay, there's actually a person leaving a situation. And those are all valid perspectives. I wanted to like this 9 of Cups, I really did, but he is like goofy drunk. And this one, we don't even have a person. We have lots of exotic tropical fruits, but the 9 of Cups is kind of a deal breaker card for me in a lot of decks. I would love, none of these cards quite hit my favorite point, but I would say this guy looks happy, he looks fulfilled, he looks content, and he doesn't look ridiculous, you know what I mean? So I really like him the best. These are all great 10 of Cups. These 2 are among my very, very favorites of all time. I've always loved the cat dog by the fireplace image here, but again, you know, the cups look empty. And at least the style of cup in the Tarot Grand Lux, you could tell yourself that those are full. I love that we actually have the couple here and the sleeping cat in the foreground. Would have been better if it was a dog, you know, because I'm a dog person. But these both really, really work. This card is probably one of my favorites in the entire deck from the Legacy of the Divine. But Grand Lux still wins. The art's just more detailed, more rich. And this one is good, but a little bit like kind of weird with the half floating family there. Again, the court cards, it's going to be a no-brainer, I think. These 2 pages versus this one, it's really no contest to me. So Tarot Grand Lux. Again, the disembodied helmet, that's a no. This one's kind of cool, riding the seahorse, but I just love the whole feeling of the knight in the Tarot Grand Lux. For queens, I've never liked this one. I don't know what it is. She just seems awkward with her face. This one's okay, but I like her the best. She, again, just really rich, detailed color. Oh, it's very vivid. I really enjoy that one. And in the king, I really kind of like all of them. He looks a little stern. So yeah, I would say that the Tarot Grand Lux is my favorite. Again, we have the extra palace card, so I'll take that out. And our aces. Never been a huge fan of this image here. This one's really cool. Yep, Tarot Grand Lux again. It's definitely winning in most categories, I would say. This 2 of Swords is great. I mean, all the decks have this one done well, I think. This one's a little too disconnected. Feels less human, I guess you could say. These 2 feel really good. This one feels a little bit more messy. And I don't think 2 of Swords are often messy moments. I think they're very serene, still moments. So I think this one wins. I'm gonna have to straighten up my cards here. So let's take a look at the Three of Swords. I really love, sorry, I know my cards are everywhere. And I'm bumping the camera. Okay. In the Legacy of the Divine, we have like this real close-up of a woman with a tear running down her cheek. This is a really potent image, and I love it. It's probably my favorite Three of Swords. This one, it looks too emotionless to me. And this one is good. I think, though, my favorite is the Legacy of the Divine. It's beautiful. These Four of Swords are good. My favorite would be these two. This one's he's out in space. Yeah. And this one's nice too because you can actually see him sort of like processing or dreaming about the battle to come or processing the battle he's already been through. This one just feels more real and relatable. Our fives. Ooh, interesting. I like how sort of devious and like a bad guy this guy looks. In this one here, though, you see yourself, if you're reading for yourself, you see the sword coming at you. It's like this guy's got you down, like he's above you. It's a really cool perspective. Teragrams Luxe. Oh, these sixes. Legacy of the Divine has got to be my favorite. I just love this sort of Avalon-y feel of the movement of the card. This one here has this masked figure and the swords seem to be kind of going all over the place. Teragrams Luxe feels very traditional and hopeful. But yeah, this one here is my favorite. Make sure I'm putting them in the right piles. Here's our Devious 7. This one's great. You really get that feeling of sneaky, sneaky. And you get the same feeling here in this one. This one, you get it, but he's in this jester costume, and I don't know. It's not my favorite. I would say Teragrams Luxe again. For the Eight of Swords, to me, it's hands down the Teragrams Luxe. This one's really good. It works just fine, but it's a bit too... again, that sort of fantasy genre kind of feel to it. This one just seems awkward. It's like she's being poked in the butt by the sword, and I don't know. This one's never really been my favorite, but this one I love. The fear on all of these is so good. I love the sneaky, creepy way that this fear comes into the card. This one's a little too literal, so not a fan. This one here... yeah, I just love it. It sets the mood. These two are both really good. It's a tie. I love these both. Oh, the art's just a bit more detailed in the Teragrams Luxe, so I'll give it to the Teragrams Luxe. I will say, this guy in the Ten of Swords in the Legacy of the Divine, he doesn't look like he's having a bad time. I mean, I think he's kind of grimacing, but I mean, it looks a little bit passionate to me. You know, I mean... I don't know, just my take. What do you guys think? This one definitely gives the idea of the swords bearing down, but I think it tiptoes a little bit. This one here feels the most like a situation you can't get out of. So I would say Teragrams Luxe. I do like that he doesn't have anybody stabbed and bloody, though. That's kind of nice. Page, Tarot of Grand Lux. Tarot of Grand Lux? Teragrams Luxe for sure. Wins that one. The Knight, again, Teragrams Luxe. I love the eagle we have here in the foreground. I love the ferocity, just the way this whole card is depicted. Beautiful. Our Queens, again, I don't know what it is with the Queens looking just a little too young. This one doesn't look so young. She's fine, and I think she's pretty effective. I think they're all effective. I would say probably... she looks almost like she's too nice. Like, I feel like the Queen of Swords often has a little bit more severe of a look about her, and I kind of like that. Like, okay, she doesn't look mean. She looks determined. And I think I don't quite see that determination and bravery, I think, in this Teragrams Luxe card. So I'd have to say, it is though in these two, I'd have to say Tarot of Dreams for this one. And our King of Swords, too young looking, Too Far Away. He's great. I love his like falcon or hawk. I'm really bad with birds, sorry. There in the foreground. Love that. The Ace, oh, and the Palace of Swords, of course, which we don't have in the other decks. All right, let's neaten this up again. So now we have the Ace of Pentacles. Hands down, look at how breathtaking the Ace of Pentacles is in the Teragrams Luxe with this deer in the foreground, or stag rather. Oh my god, it's so gorgeous, I can't even. And what is with this dude holding the like, no, with the extra muscles. Do not need that in my deck. This one's cool, it works. Got the acorns, got the big golden pentacle. In the two, this one's always felt a little funny to me, just artistically. It just, I don't know, it feels very fiery and glowy and weird. I don't know. This one works just fine with the juggling, but, oh, sorry, this one. But I have to say the Teragrams Luxe is my favorite. Let's neaten up our cards. Oh my gosh, you guys, we're making it through. All right, so 3 of Pentacles. It's a toss-up between these two, but I like that you can kind of see what he's working on in the background here, and you can see what a vast project it is, but I've always loved this 3 as well. Teragrams Luxe. This one wasn't really in the contender. It's nice, but the others do it better, I think. And you can kind of see the evolution of Ciro's artwork as well here. I mean, the artwork for the Tarot of Dreams was actually done before the Legacy of the Divine, and yet sometimes these two decks artistically are much more similar, whereas I think the Teragrams Luxe really stands out for just how detailed it is and how much depth you have in the artwork. For these 4s, these two guys look a lot more kind of greedy, and this one looks a lot more neutral. Like he's being cautious, and so this works better for the way that I read this card. Our 5s, probably the Legacy of the Divine is my favorite. I think it really speaks to that feeling of the 5. The Tarot of Dreams almost goes a little bit more traditional, so it works. And this one, it works and it gives me a lot to read off of as a reader. I'm not sad to be working with this one, but it's just not quite what I would wish it would be. The 6, I really like the scale here. This one's also good in that he's reaching sort of out to you. And some of the images, when they're doing that, they kind of pull you into the story better, so that's really cool. But I really love this image, like a lot. Yeah, I love that. Okay. Love the idea of harvest around the 7 of Pentacles, or 7 of Coins as he calls them. I've been calling them Pentacles this whole time. Sorry. But I have to say artistically, oh, this one's got the little dog though. I do like this one the best. Although I wish she had a dog. That would make it better. In the 8, I feel like of these 3, this one looks the most like the master. Like somebody who's really refining his craft. This one looks a little bit like too much like the 3, like he's still struggling a little bit. This one, he's definitely focusing, so these two are both, I think, really equally good, but I like the art better in this card. Our 9. There's something about the way her face is that's a little too flat. I actually prefer this card to this card, so Legacy of the Divine to Tarot of Dreams. I think really of the 3, I like the idea, the way this image is laid out much better. You can see the wall to her garden. She feels very sheltered. She's got her bird friend. There's a very luxurious setting. This one, again, I like the detail in the artwork, but I wish I could more clearly see the wall behind her. It's a toss-up. Artistically, I prefer the Teragrams Luxe, but I like the way the scene is portrayed in the Legacy of the Divine. For our 10, you know, esoterically, the Tarot of Dreams hits it because we have the Kabbalah in the 10 of Coins, like we're used to seeing in a lot of more traditional decks. And here, you just get the idea of a lot of money. So this one kind of misses. This one hits esoterically, but when it comes to just reading the cards and reading for a client or for myself, this idea of having accomplished and having saved up for your goal, this sort of hits that mark. You know, being in a place of plenty. But I would say that none of these are my favorite depictions ever of the 10 of Coins. I think this one would be my favorite. again, we have our pages, and it's an easy win for the Teragrams Luxe. We have this little, I was going to say, we have this little Bambi. It's a little fawn in the foreground here, which is great. Then we have our knights, and we have a bear depicted in the Teragrams Luxe. Again, this one's an easy winner. I just love the introduction of the animal companions and the elements being really obvious. Oops, we're upside down. Queen of Coins. She just feels the most refined artistically. And again, now we have more animals. We have a bunny and a fox. I would say that the animals in the Teragrams Luxe quartz was one of the things that really tipped me over the edge. I will say when it comes to our King of Pentacles, they all look good. I wish this 10, I keep saying Pentacles, but I wish this 10 of Coins looked a little more comfortable. He looks a little bit tricksy. He's got that kind of foxy look about him, which I suppose our sort of entrepreneur, or our, maybe not entrepreneur, but our like, King of Finance or King of Material Wealth. I guess he has to be a little bit crafty to get where he's at, so it works. And artistically, it's my favorite because, of course, we again have the animals present here. We have the stag and we have the wolf, but I wish there was a little more here. These guys just aren't as refined artistically. Love the palaces in the Tarot of Dreams. I think it's a really cool element added into the deck. And when you pull these palace cards in a reading, you know, you have this option to look at the environment and the elemental attributes of that environment when you're doing a reading, which is really cool. And you do have a Kabbalah reference card, Tree of Life reference card with the Tarot of Dreams as well. So that's an extra card. So that is the side, that is the side by side. I think having gone through them all, you know, I've got a lot of cards that I like in all three decks, and each sort of brings its own sort of unique take. I'm going to zoom us back out again. Each sort of brings its own unique take to the tarot, which is really special. I feel like, you know, if I let this deck go, I would never have that palace element that I could work with if I chose. You know, this one has a lot of memories, and so many of the images are like longtime favorites. But I think my main working Ciro Marchetti deck moving forward is going to be the Teragrams Luxe. And I'm so pleased I picked it up. I can't wait to edge the deck in black. I think it's going to really make them look nice. I loved how the Legacy of the Divine looked when it was black, and the Tarot of Dreams. I have a feeling that these two decks are going to be mostly retired. I don't know that I can bring myself to let them go, though. So I'm going to be keeping them, but I'm going to be working primarily with this one. I do tend to feel called to pull Ciro's decks when I'm reading for male clients, depending on the client. I just feel like this has a much more balanced look at both the feminine and the masculine energies. I love how the quartz are depicted in this deck. I love how rich and detailed the artwork is throughout. It just feels very lush and very three-dimensional, and there's a lot more grounded energy in this deck. There's a lot less of that sort of space sci-fi feel. You still get Ciro's sort of artistic, obviously you get his artistic point of view, but it's more balanced, I feel like, with elemental energies and more grounded energies. So I'm really, really, really excited. I'm super glad that I picked this one up. I'm going to be looking forward to working with it in the future. And that is it. I hope that if you have considered any of these decks, I know that you can still get all three of these right now. I believe they are all still currently in print. They are all mass market. That's really good news. If you've been considering one of them, that you can look at all three and kind of pick maybe the one that really, really resonates with you, or the one that you see yourself working with the most, and go with that. For now, I'm going to just sort of lean into playing with the Teragrams Luxe for the time being, and then just see if I feel called to pull these others in the future. And if I don't, then down the road I may end up letting them go. But for now, they're all going to stay happily in my collection. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for this very lengthy comparison walkthrough of Ciro Marchetti's Legacy of the Divine, Tarot of Dreams, and Teragrams Luxe. I would love to hear your thoughts on these decks below, if you have a favorite, or what your favorite Ciro Marchetti deck is. I would love to hear back from you. Remember to like, share, and subscribe if you are new here. And don't forget, if you want to book a private reading with me, you can do that at my website, www.supportivetarot.com. Thank you so much, and I'll see you all again very soon. Bye!